I promised you guys an announcement, and so I am definitely going to bring an announcement. I'm going to bring a word of encouragement first, a very short one. I want to make an announcement about a very cool opportunity, very fun opportunity for people that have the heart and desire to grow in relationship with God. So you've probably already seen the description, I imagine, as exactly what the announcement is. So we're going to be creating an 8-week live webinar course that's going to allow you to grow with God and to maybe be challenged and some of the things that maybe you've desired to grow in God but haven't known or felt stuck or wanted someone to help you through, something like that. And so beginning in March, around March 8th on Saturdays at 8:30 a.m., so that men specifically have time to do other things they want to do, and or sleep in a little bit. For 8 weeks, we're going to go after the things of God. The topics are there that we're going to go through. That's just a taste of it before I share this word from Romans, and then I'll really go into the announcements about the webinar. So here's the big question to think about as I read the word to us from Romans 11. There is an interesting passage of scripture in there. There it is, Romans 11. All right, well, in Romans 11, it says this: lest you be wise in your own sight. Now, for those of you guys who don't know the book of Romans here, this is from the Apostle Paul. He is writing this to the church in Rome, or to the Romans, because when they were in Jerusalem, they were basically being oppressed by the Romans. So during that whole season that Jesus was here. And so now this is to the church of the Roman people, whether in Jerusalem or in Rome. And so the question I want to ask you guys before I read this, I wasn't going to ask this question before, but now I'm going to ask it before, is this. You ready for this? Here we go. Would you rather know and have your gifting in life or your calling? Would you rather know and have your gifting or your calling? All right. Now, some of you might, be wise to me because I like to do tricky questions, and some of you might be like, hey, I'd want both, right? You can't answer that way. I want you to think about this. What would you rather have? Your gifting in life or your calling? All right. I want you to chew on that as I read through this. Romans 11 says, lest you be wise in your own sight, I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. The Gentiles being people that are outside of the Jewish faith at that time. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob, which is also Israel. And this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As regards the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. All right, Christians, believers, I want you to hear that right now. This is Paul, the Apostle Paul, saying that Jews, Israel, and this isn't a political statement at all, I'm not saying that. I just want us to be challenged with that question. Do you want your gifting or your calling? And because, in this time and day, this is a big thing in front of us, is Israel and other countries and all of that. But it's not a political statement that I'm making. I'm just saying, as regards the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. So Paul, who was a Jew, is saying about his own people that the Jews were enemies of people outside of Israel. And it says, for your sake. Why would he say that? But as regards election to salvation, as we talk about, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers, meaning all the way back to Abraham and Noah and before Adam and Eve. Romans 11:29. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable, meaning they cannot be taken away. For just as you, the people outside of the Jewish faith, at one time, for just as you were at one time disobedient to God, right? Because Adam and Eve fell in the garden, but now have received mercy because of their disobedience, right? How many of you guys out there know that Adam and Eve were not Jewish, all right? So for just as you were at one time disobedient to God, the line that came through Adam and Eve, and then eventually Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, they were disobedient to God. The Israelite people were disobedient to God. But now, right, just as we were disobedient to God, the world, we have received mercy because of Israel's disobedience. So right now, that partial hardening he's talking about is because they still don't see the truth. But Romans 11:31 says, so they too have now been disobedient in order that by the mercy shown to us, they also may now receive mercy. Now, I'm not a political statement. I'm talking about what they're doing and what Israel's trying to, making choices to do right now. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the individual people of Israel are allowed to receive mercy from who? From Christ, because they didn't receive him. Why? Because of our disobedience. So they were disobedient, which allowed all the Gentiles, the ones outside of the Jewish faith, to come in. And now, because we were disobedient, that also puts a balance in place to allow Israel to then receive mercy. Check this out. For God has consigned all to disobedience. He knew we would all be disobedient, that he may have mercy on all. On all. So again, I ask you, would you rather have your gifting or your calling? Would you rather know and have your gifting or your calling? Because why does he put that in there? The last verse is this: oh, the depth, the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord? Who has been his counselor? Right? So I wanted to read that to you because the verse we're honing in on is for the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. But it's such a big picture because that verse gets quoted a lot. That verse gets quoted by people a lot. And they usually use it as an individual type thing. Like, hey, the giftings and callings of God are irrevocable without repentance. God gives, and that's true. He does. However, the context of where that verse is actually stated by Paul is based on the disobedience of the world. I'm going to let that sink in. The giftings and callings of God, of what he wants us to utilize our giftings and callings about, and to know that they're irrevocable, Paul put it in the context of disobedience of all. So let me ask you a question. Are we allowed to manipulate our gifting and our calling? No. Why? Because in the unsearchable ways of God, he not only made them irrevocable, he's showing us a picture of that the Gentiles, those outside of the Jewish faith, outside of Israel, right? Outside of Jacob, he says Israel, which is where that name Israel comes from. Outside of them, the people of the world were given the opportunity and mercy to receive the same salvation that he offered up to Israel. Why? Because Israel had been disobedient so many times. Now, then he says, because of our disobedience as well. So because of our disobedience, that Israel was actually trying to walk in the law. They were trying to walk in the laws that were given by Abraham by Abraham and Moses, and then they disobeyed. Well, because of the ones that they were walking in the law in front of, our disobedience now allows God to be merciful to Israel, and at some point Israel be restored back into fellowship. And so by doing that, in God's perfect mercy and his perfect judgment, Everyone in the world has the opportunity to be reconciled. Now, what does that have to do with gifting and calling? I just wanted you to see that we use this many times for individual purpose, but the gifting and calling of God being irrevocable is actually for sake of the entire world, not just ourself. Does that make sense? The plan of the gifting and calling in your life is to be used on behalf of the world. It's not to be used to elevate you, because why? Because Paul writes that God in his perfect wisdom already knew we were all disobedient. So our giftings and callings, if it's not used for him, are useless. That's why they're irrevocable, because he gave them to you so that they'd be used on behalf of the world, whether on the side of, right, Israel or outside of Israel, so that the whole world could receive him. Now, back to the question, it is a bit of a trick question, because I would rather have, you ready for this? Here's my answer to that question. I'd rather have character. And why do you say that, Ian? Why? Now, why am I doing this little teaching? These are the type of questions and the type of things we're going to go over. If you read the description now on the Facebook Live, there's a description underneath about the announcement of an 8-week webinar opportunity that I'm going to be hosting. If you read the topics, this is one of the topics that we're going to be going over. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you, because these are the type of questions and the type of interaction as men of faith that we're going to go into. It's not going to be 8 weeks of me just preaching a sermon at you and you listening to a good sermon. If that's what you're looking for, then this is not for you. But if you're looking to grow in your faith with God, your relationship with him, even if you're just starting to know about God, or maybe you want to go deeper with Jesus, you never really have gone the depth you want to go, that's what we're going to do in this. And I'm inviting all men into it for now, so that I'm accountable for myself of what God's given me the last 20 or 25 years and what I've been trying to walk through and struggle through with the Lord on this. And what has allowed me to walk in freedom is part of what I'm teaching you right now. And so would you rather have your gifting or your calling? And it was a trick question. I'd rather have character. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of people may be aware right now that are watching this that not only are we having issues in the West of actual challenges in front of us, we can make them political, we can make them whatever, but my son and I had a great talk about this the other day about will versus actually writing things into law that could actually help people walk deeper into darkness, and where do we do with that, and how do we go with that? And also those same sins, those same tragedies, those same abuses that we accuse the world of, like in this passage, we're actually seeing them play out in the church right now. For the last 2 years, there's been a domino effect on many, many major places like IHOP Kansas City, TD Jakes, Daystar, Hillsong. For those of you guys who are frustrated that I'm calling it out, I'm sorry. That's what this is going to be about, is helping men grow bold and speak up and talk about the things that are under the table in the church that Jesus would have flipped the tables about, because I'd rather have character than gifting and calling. And in my opinion, it's the gifting and calling being confused as to why we're seeing these abuses in the church. Why? I read the passage to you, because they're irrevocable. They're irrevocable without repentance. And most people search out their gifting and calling for sake of their own legacy instead of the inheritance that Paul's talking about here, so that everyone in the world comes to Christ. I hope you see that. And so why would I rather have character? Well, what does it mean that your gifting and calling is irrevocable? Well, that means this. And why I would actually rather have character is because my character is going to, you ready for this? This is the notes that you're going to want in a webinar like what we're going to do. I'd rather have character because it's going to sustain my calling. It's going to sustain my calling well into my later years when my gifting isn't able to be produced. What do I mean by that? Well, my history is baseball. I was very good at it. I got really good at it. I trained at it. I then coached at it and had schools for it and all of that. But when I'm 46 right now, I'm stronger than I've ever been, thanks to CrossFit and other things. But I can move agile. I can do the things I did when I was younger, but I can't do them as fast at all. And when I'm 60, I'll definitely not be able to do them as fast. My gifting goes from my physical and my emotional side to just my mental. I would only be able to know the things within my gifting. I wouldn't necessarily do them. Some of you guys have watched some of these singers, celebrities that are great singers into their 70s and 80s. Some of them are able to sustain the type of voice they had when they were younger because of training and strength training and stuff. But the bottom line is, as they get older, they're losing their voice and their songs get shorter and they start talking their lyrics instead of singing them. But we are caught up in the song and the person, right? And so we don't see it as much. But if that person goes out and murders 3 people tomorrow, their voice isn't going to matter because their character showed who they really were. And so whether you're the Beatles or whether you're Chris Tomlin, you can walk into a bar or into a coffee shop and get behind a piano or a guitar, and your gifting is going to play out. Why? Because whether it's for God or not, it's irrevocable. Hopefully that makes sense. However, your character of how you relate to the people, how you treat the barista, what you do when you come in the building, when you go out of it, that lasts with you forever and actually grows and gets better and matures as you walk in your actual relationship with God and being able to hear him. And so I'd rather have gifting. Would you rather know and have your gifting or your calling? And why my calling? Why would I rather have my calling above my gifting? Because my calling reaches everyone. My calling reaches everyone. Now, can my calling get twisted like my gifting? Yeah, if I try to focus on my calling for the sake of my own legacy, all right, then yeah, it can get twisted. If my gifting, right, if my gifting isn't used for my calling, then I can also get it twisted, and also I can end up burning out because my gifting doesn't sustain the desire of the voice of man that I want in my life. And so my character will sustain my calling long after my gifting has waned or become soft. Character, above all, is what we're seeking as men of God that want to grow in faith, so that what Paul's talking about here, so that all come into mercy, so that all receive mercy. Character is what allows us to give mercy. Gifting and calling doesn't necessarily give mercy. In Matthew 5, when Jesus is talking about blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy, your gifting and calling has nothing to do with that. That has to do with your character. And if you don't know the truth and the truth doesn't set you free, you can't give mercy out. And so I'd rather have character. There's a lot more to say about gifting and calling and character, but I just wanted to give you a taste of one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. One of the things that we're going to be sharing as men and interacting as men in this webinar. And so hopefully that blessed you. I'm going to remove this and go over the details. Here are the details of the webinar. All right. We're going to start this webinar on March 8th. On March 8th, and it's going to go every Saturday to the end of April. It's going to go every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Why? Because right now I am sharing this with you at 5:30 in the morning in Mozambique, Africa time, and that's the evening. And I just probably would not be able to consistently get up at around 3:30 in the morning so that we could get men right after work. And I know that 6 to 8 is a sweet spot for men. But as I was praying through this and looking up some research and stuff, I also realized that a lot of my friends, when they have the weekends off, their family either likes to sleep in or go do stuff after around 9 o'clock-ish, 10 o'clock-ish on the weekends. And so 8:30 is actually a really good time for people that are committed to something. People that are spiritually wanting to change something. That time of 7:30 to 9:30, 10:30 is a sweet spot on Saturdays, and men are able to switch into the weekend form of like, I want to grow in something, I want to do something else, I want to check out of work and do that. And I also know that 8 weeks isn't a long time, but for some guys, they want to be able to partake in stuff, but they can't, if we can't commit to all 8, sometimes we just say, I probably just won't go. So I made it available in 2 ways. All right. The webinar is going to be available in 2 ways. One per session. So March 8th, then March 15th, then so forth. You can choose, in the link below in this description here, and also when it goes posted on Facebook, you'll be able to see the link that you can go to register. That registration is going to give you a couple of questions and an option. The option is how many weeks are you available for? Okay. And so you're able to choose, I want to be there for 3 weeks, and just pick the topics that you want to plug into. That way, if you're on spring break or something else and you feel like you'd be interrupting the guys group if you didn't do all of it, you don't have to feel bad. I want you to be there for what you can be there for. However, it doesn't necessarily build on itself until that last week. The last week, we're going to be very practical in what we apply and how we go into the next season of our life. But all of the classes can stand alone, just like what we were talking about, and should stand alone. The other option is to get all eight weeks, to register for all 8 weeks. So you have 2 options. You can register for all 8 weeks, which is one cost. It's like going to be a little bit less, and then per session, like as if you were popping into a CrossFit gym and just paying a pop in. All right. So that's going to start March 8th, 8:30 in the morning, Pacific time. We're going to be going 2 hours, more than likely at least. And then I'm going to promise you guys that we're not going to, depending on the week, we're not going to go over 3. And I've been doing some other webinars and stuff, and so you can trust me on that. At the 3-hour mark, no matter what, we're going to turn it off, so that you can commit to your family, your kids, whatever those things are you're doing, that this will go no longer than 3 hours. And that most of the stuff we're going to be talking about and applying and engaging in isn't going to be more than 2. If we go over 2, it's probably because we're trying to have community time with each other, engage each other, have questions, maybe grab emails of each, figure out ways that we can actually do life together and apply questions during the course. Up to the 2-hour mark is going to be very specific in curriculum and how we engage, and maybe break out into small groups and those type of things. And so I don't want to say you're not missing anything after the 2-hour mark, but if you were wanting to commit to your family a specific time, which is good to be disciplined and just tell them, hey, this is the time I'm committing to, that's fine. It's going to be over Zoom. When you register and do the small pay link, then you'll be sent the Zoom link for that week of the thing. All right. Also, I'm going to do my best that for the men that want to go 8 weeks and something happens, or want to do a couple sessions, but you'd actually like to catch all of the weeks, you just can't be there live, I'm going to try to work out a way to be able to restream. You won't be able to interact live, but you'll be able to see it. I'm going to record everything so that we can restream it, maybe the next day or whatever. The challenge with that for me is internet here. So for me to try to upload a 2-hour video can take more than a day. And so I don't want to make a promise I can't keep in that regard, but we will set it up at some point so that it can be restreamed, or so that it can be, taken in as content in the future for men that want to grow. All right. I'm trying to think if you guys have any other questions, shoot them at me so we can make this a small one, but it's called We Are Ships. We'll explain why it's called that in the actual course, live webinar 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. It's called We Are Ships, and it's going to be an 8-week webinar every Saturday, 8:30 a.m. until the last week of April. This is also going to create a community that's going to allow us to email each other, walk in togetherness of trying to grow our relationship. It may open up other events and other free content and resources that I'm going to try to do to empower people that are actually trying to grow in their relationship with God as men. I'm really focused on men and helping them to love God and follow God. That's the mandate I feel, is to help them love God and follow God. In the description and the link, it shares kind of the history of why I'm doing that. The final thing is that this is going to be capped off at 100 men. Now, for some of you, that may sound like a lot, which I wish it was 1,000, but hopefully we'll get to a point where we're influencing 1,000 men, and those men can then grow and go out and impart what God's doing in their life. But we're going to cap it off at 100. I think at that point we can engage decently well, and also we can break into groups if we need to. Well, not need to, but when we need to, because we will break into small groups. And so make sure that you get on this quickly, because I've already sent out an email. I'm sending out other emails. I'm going to do some other videos tonight. I'm going to hop on here again, my time tonight, and announce this again and share this again. So the first 100 guys can pop in, because this is also going to be a test run of what this looks like for me to follow up with people about what are the things that God's putting on men's heart to grow in, and what are the things that men are struggling with, so that I can create some stuff that is that allows resource for men, maybe in short windows of time, maybe long windows of time, to where they can actually grow and be resourced with something that's not live as well. Some people can learn and apply things better if it's not in live context. But I'm really sensing that God wants us to be live, so that we can encourage each other, exhort, minister to each other, and me facilitate applying and learning and having other men hear and be encouraged by similar things that we've also walked through the last 20 years, and how we went through them, maybe how we failed at them, how we restored back, or came back to God in those processes. And so it's called We Are Ships. And the key here is we're trying to get you on course for your God-given purpose, but also in this is to help you to be able to self-correct when you're off course. All right. If you have any questions, make sure that you message me and or register for the link. And then that gives you the email, or gives me your email, so I can send you a message, and then we can just talk about any questions you have before you actually do the full registration. It's going to be super, super low cost. I think I'm charging $15 a session. So it's either $15 a session or $100 total for the whole 8 weeks, for the time that we're putting in, and to cover basically my internet cost and the gasoline that I'm going to be putting in my generator, because I'm going to make sure the power doesn't go out or on there. I'm in Africa, and so we'll always have power during our sessions. We won't have to worry about the power going out and all that kind of stuff. All right. Looking forward to this, men of God. Super stoked about it. Share this with someone. If you can't go, or you are going and you know someone, a man that wants to grow in God, please send this to them. Oh, final thing, we're capping it at 18 years old. My boys are getting close to that, all three of them. Tobias 20, and the other two, Jaden's going to turn 18 soon, and Gideon's 16. And they are part of this with me and everything. They're probably going to sit in on it in some way, or be on their device watching it. I've offered that up to them. And part of growing as a man of God is helping your kids hear God. That's one of the biggest things I want to do, is the families to move as a unit. However, I need to cap it at an age where the accountability level for us is we're able to communicate, and there's no questions from other families of like what we're talking about that might be a little bit above a 16-year-old's ears or whatever. I know today's day and age, it doesn't matter, but it can also be an issue. So I want to, since this is the inaugural one, let's keep it at 18 years old. And then hopefully part of what I want to talk about with y'all is how we can set up things so that our, 12 to 16-year-olds or 14 to 18-year-olds, how they can do things like what we're doing, so that they can hear from God, but in a safe place, in a healthy place, in a biblical place, where men can help walk them through that. And I just don't have the capacity for it yet. But if we do 18-year-olds and above, man, we can touch that younger generation as well. So if you are a man of 18 or older, you're invited to this. All right. This is your personal invite. Join us on March 8th. The registration's in the description. We Are Ships webinar taking off.